Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Pack your bags! Today on Oklahoma Gardening, we are headed out of Stillwater as we kick off our regional tour and head to Northeastern Oklahoma. Horticulture is all around us, from our backyard garden all the way to our kitchen table. And like you, we were excited to finally get back out on the road and discover the horticulture in Northeastern Oklahoma. As we kick off our regional tour, one of the things that we always try to highlight is the diversity within our state. And there's no better way to do that than by traveling to Northeastern Oklahoma, as we head from the flat Central Plains all the way east to the hilly Cross Timbers. We are going to look at ecology and also how ecology is closely tied to horticulture, both in the backyard and at Greenleaf Nursery in Park Hill, Oklahoma. We're also going to look at 2 city gardens and the special things that they offer to their visitors. Now, you're probably wondering where I am, because obviously I'm not in a garden. But if you've ever been to Stillwater, you know exactly where I am. This is a staple institution called Hideaway Pizza. And while they're best known for their pizza, a second runner-up on the menu are these fried mushrooms. Now, they say great ingredients make great food. And I think one of the special ingredients to these delicious fried mushrooms are the fact that they are grown locally right here in Oklahoma. Join us as we kick off our Northeastern Regional Tour as we head to Miami, Oklahoma to visit JM Farms and see how they produce commercially grown wholesale mushrooms that you can find not only at Hideaway Pizza, but also at your local grocery store. Today we are here in Miami, Oklahoma at JM Farms, and we are going to take a look at the compost that goes into those beautiful mushrooms that we've all seen in our grocery stores. Joining me today is Mark Zordell, who is the growing manager at JM Farms. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us a little bit, you've got some beautiful compost behind us. What goes into all of this?
So it's a compost made up of wheat straw, chicken litter, gypsum, cottonseed meal, and a little bit of urea and a lot of water.
So a nice recipe.
Right.
And so obviously you're looking at carbon and nitrogen, right?
Correct. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that process.
So we send off lab analysis each week to get more so our chicken litter nitrogen, and that can affect how we're doing with our recipe, whether we add more chicken litter, take chicken litter out, depending on what that nitrogen percentage is. And then the structure of the compost, that kind of stuff, that can cause different degrees of breakdown. So we want everything to be pretty structured, or the correct structure for us, and then that can get us where we can get our composting done in approximately a 3-week period.
Okay, so your base product is wheat straw, is that correct?
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about how that 3 weeks begins with the wheat straw.
So we start with dunking it, getting that moisture in the bale and getting that heat up started.
Okay.
Once it sets for a few days, then we'll break it open into big piles and then turn it with water and add the supplements to it.
Okay, and so after a few days, it just gets turned, and
Yep.
do you have to worry about oxygen and that sort of
We
stuff?
do, so that's why we're turning it, so we
Okay.
don't get anaerobic. So we want to keep that stuff aerobic. And then when it goes from pre-wet piles, it'll go into bunkers. The bunkers then are where we add air to it. on off a certain amount of times and keep that compost aerobic.
And you have special bunkers, is that right?
We do.
Tell me what's so special about them.
So they're an aerated floor. What we do there is we have a huge fan in the back that blows air through the pipes and blows the air up through the compost. So we're checking temperatures there with probes and computer systems on those bunkers.
And so what's the ideal temperature that you're looking for to kind of know that process is happening?
It depends on the stage of the process. So in the first process, you're going to get more of a chemical reaction. So you're going to get the higher temperatures, 160 degrees plus. As it goes through the process, you're going to get more of the biological breakdown. So those are going to be in the lower temperatures, so 130 or so.
All right. And I can see some of these piles here. So is this in the finishing stages? Because they're still steaming, it looks like.
Yeah, so the ricking barn is in the finishing stages. So that compost is still continuing to break down. We do turn it with turners in this stage as well to keep that compost aerobic. Here, we're just looking for structure. We want a certain amount of breakdown before going into the tunnels, and moisture. If we need to add water, we can. Okay. So we have the correct moisture going in to the tunnels and so forth. So these ricks are still in that 120 to 130 degree range.
And are you monitoring the moisture levels as well, I would imagine?
We are, yes.
Okay. So tell me, I know it takes, bacteria and stuff to actually create compost and to break down.
Right.
But you're also trying to grow mushrooms in this later on. So
Correct.
What do you do to get rid of that maybe contaminated bacteria?
Yeah, the bad stuff, what we'll do is we'll pasteurize that in the tunnels. That'll kill off anything that's harmful to you or I or the mushrooms. Once that process has taken place, then we'll cool that compost down using fresh air and fan speeds.
Okay.
We'll cool that down, and we will condition the compost and get it ready for spawning.
So when you talk about the tunnels, tell me a little bit about what these tunnels are and the infrastructure that you have in there.
So the old way of doing it, we did it in trays. We would add steam to the room. We would heat that steam, or we'd heat that room up to 140 degrees and hold it for a certain amount of hours. It was very energy dependent. We had to have a lot of gas usage and different things to do that. Now with these tunnels, these are state of the art. Everything's done in bulk, so it's still like it is out here on the wharf, but inside a tunnel. We can control that with fresh air and fan speed. Okay. So we can lower the fan speed down, limit the amount of fresh air going in, and we can heat that compost up naturally. And then we hold it for a certain amount of time, and we can do that at a lower temperature because we can do it for a longer period of time. Then we can bring that down and condition it and get that breakdown continuing to happen. So everything's very consistent in the tunnels, where in the trays it was a very inconsistent
and it's
process.
It's quite a piece of machinery that you have in there. Can you tell us what that actual machine does, loading and unloading?
Right. So we can actually drive the machine into the tunnels, and then it can fill that tunnel evenly from top to wherever or from bottom to wherever we set the height at. Mm-hmm. We have checks to make sure that they're operating consistently, and then that way we have adequate airflow through. If we don't fill it consistently, then that airflow is all over the place and your temperatures are all over the place.
So tell me about, once it's filled up in those tunnels, it sits there for how long and what happens after that? 5
to 6 days is how long it sits in there. Once we are ready to empty it, the day before, we'll cool that compost down to anywhere from 75 to 80 degrees, depending on the time of year. We will then bring that compost out. So we have a large winch that the net will wrap around. We will bring it out using that winch. The winch will break the compost up, convey it up to other conveyors that are taking it over to where we can put it into trays.
Okay.
On those conveyors, we are adding spawn and supplement. So spawn is basically like the seed of the mushroom, and then the supplement is like a fertilizer. Okay,
so you don't use spores like a lot of times we think about with mushrooms. What is the difference there?
So the spawn is a grain-based seed that has the spores inoculated on it to use as a food source until it's in the compost.
Okay. So really there's no soil at all in mushroom production,
Correct.
Right? It's all compost, it's all organic matter.
Correct.
So this is really good stuff, I would imagine, after you're done growing the mushrooms as well. Tell me a little bit
Right.
about after we produce mushrooms.
So once it's gone through our process, we do add a little bit of peat to the layer in the middle of the process to start growing the mushrooms. That is added inside.
Okay.
But once it comes out, from start to finish, it's about an 80-day process. So at that end of the process, we bring that compost back in trays. We steam anything off to make sure it's good for local gardeners and anyone else that wants to use it, and make sure any diseases that are present that would be harmful to mushrooms are also killed off, so we don't spread that throughout our process.
Okay, so it's available to anybody who might want to come pick up some good mushroom compost.
It is.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the nutrients for a gardener that might be buying mushroom compost here?
Right, so it's gone through our process, so it's going to have less nutrients than what it did when it started, but it does still have a good amount of nitrogen for local gardeners. It depends on how they use it, whether they want to mix it straight in or they want to let it set. We've had people do both, and we've had people have success with both ways.
Okay. Do you sell it in bulk around to stores and stuff that somebody could buy it from another place? Or
No, we don't. We sell to a local factory here that will bag it up and sell it to Home Depots and different things after it's gone through a process that they do. Here, we just sell it to local customers.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information with us, Mark.
Thank you.
Taken a look on the outside about the compost, and now we are inside to look at the production of these beautiful mushrooms that come from JM Farms. Joining us is McKinzie Koons, who's going to share that process with us. So we were outside and we saw the trays getting filled with compost, and they had the spawn put in there. So tell us a little bit after that process.
So when it comes in, it goes into a spawn room where it stays for 15 days. And during those 15 days, that mycelium is allowed to colonize and mature. On day 15, we pull all of those trays out and they're ready to be cased. And by cased, I mean we put this mixture of peat moss and lime on top, and it goes into a setback room, which is where we are now. It'll stay here for 12 days, and during that 12 days, we induce pinning. So we're encouraging that mushroom to grow up through that casing layer.
So what we're seeing, this white stuff, this isn't bad fungus or anything, right? That's the mycelium?
Yeah, it's just excess mycelium. You can see that this area doesn't have any casing soil or casing layer on it. If you were to leave spawn trays in a room with no casing layer indefinitely, you would never get a mushroom.
Okay.
They require a medium to grow up through.
Okay, so the mushrooms are going to grow up through that casing. Is there any environmental factors that cause that? Is it pinning? Is the term?
Yeah, so we're worried about temperature during this point, CO2, fresh air. So gradually we're going to kind of walk our temperature up. And then on day 5, we're going to lower that and increase our fresh air. And that sends a signal to that mycelium that it's time to start pinning up through that casing layer.
So are you trying to recreate an environmental that they would experience outside?
Yeah, we're basically mimicking Mother Nature at night. So,
Okay.
you go to bed one day, there are no mushrooms. You wake up the next day and you've got mushrooms in your yard.
Okay.
That's essentially what happens here.
Okay, so after they've been pinned, what's the next step?
Yeah, so they'll stay in this room for 12 days. On day 12, they'll either transfer up to our front growing hall or to a satellite farm where they will stay until day 34 and just finish out their growing cycle.
So once we start seeing mushroom buttons coming up, what happens then?
Yeah, so this is a day 11. On day 15, we will typically start harvesting, and then it's pretty fast and furious. Mushrooms double in size every 24 hours. Typically, we're harvesting on a crop every single day. So,
okay, do you just get one harvest off of that tray?
No,
or?
we get 3. So we have 3 breaks. On day 18, we will strip every mushroom off the bed. We'll do that again on day 26 and then again on day 33.
Okay,
generally.
so quite a few mushrooms are coming off.
Yes, it's important to have really healthy compost.
All right, and so you guys also package them all here, slice them, and then provide them to both restaurants and grocery stores.
Ideally, what's picked will be packed and shipped and in our customers' hands within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, so from compost to finished product, can you tell us a little bit of how long that takes?
From start of compost to your first mushroom, you're roughly 3 months.
All right. So you have to kind of plan ahead for some of your busy seasons.
Oh,
do you guys have seasons with mushrooms?
Well, it's a year-round crop, but we do ramp up production for Christmas, Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, Easter, things like that. So we do that 3 months in advance.
So a lot of those family gathering holidays.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, McKinzie. And it's been exciting to see this whole production. And next time you're joining your family for a family holiday, don't forget to enjoy some JM mushrooms.
Hi everybody. Last fall I found a recipe for a mushroom cream sauce that can be served over steak or a pork chop that is just out of this world delicious. And truth be told, I have not liked mushrooms for most of my life, and this recipe has really turned me around on that. It is a quick and easy recipe, but it is so quick that you need to have all of your vegetables prepped before you start, because once you start, it just moves. The recipe starts by browning your mushrooms. So I have some white button mushrooms that I have sliced, and I am going to put about a tablespoon of butter into my cast iron skillet here with a drizzle of this avocado oil. And then I'm going to add my mushrooms in. And it's important that you don't overcrowd your pan. And by that I mean you don't want all of your mushrooms stacked up on top of each other. You want them pretty much in a single layer as much as you possibly can. When the vegetables are stacked on top of each other or layered in the pan, they steam and they don't brown, and you really want to get a good brown on these mushrooms. Part of the reason I didn't like mushrooms until recently is that I just didn't know how to prepare them. And mushrooms are not onions. So normally you throw onions in the pan, you cook them until they're soft, you take them out, you put them in whatever you're going to put them in. Mushrooms take a little bit more attention. They take a little bit longer to cook. They are full of water. They're just a totally different texture from any other vegetable, and so you have to give them their time. Once your mushrooms have been nicely browned and gotten slightly crispy in the pan, you're ready to prep your steak. Use whatever kind of steak you like. Whatever cut you like is fine. I have a New York strip here. It's cut pretty thin. I'm going to just pat it dry using some paper towels. So literally just take your paper towel and press on it. Try to get some of the moisture out. And flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. If you take some of this moisture out, it browns a lot better in the skillet. Once you've kind of patted it dry, we'll season it with salt and pepper. Really simple on both sides. Use as much pepper as you like. Some people like it really peppery. Next thing you're going to do is take some clean paper towel and your tongs and come back to your skillet, and we're going to give it a wipe, a quick wipe. We're just trying to get the butter out of it because the fat in the butter can burn pretty easily. And now we're just going to give our pan another drizzle with avocado oil. Do not use olive oil for this. The smoke point is too low. But canola oil, avocado oil should work. We're gonna let that heat for just a little bit. In order to get a nice crust on the steak without overcooking it, you need your pan to be screaming hot, like about 400 degrees. And once the steak is in there, don't move it. Don't move it until you're ready to flip. Just let it do its thing. And when it's ready to flip, it will release easily from the pan. So if you're trying to flip it and it feels like it's sticking, it's just not ready to flip yet. So after about a minute or two on each side, you're ready to take it off. Just set it on a plate and set it aside. You can put it with your mushrooms, or you can put it on a different plate if you want. Just don't put it back on the same plate that it was on when it was still raw. So I have wiped out my pan again when the steak came out, just to get as much of the little bits of meat off the bottom of the pan as I can. It's not completely necessary that you do that, but this is a cream sauce, and leaving that in there will make it a little darker. And I have melted another almost tablespoon of butter and put a little drizzle of my oil. For the sauce, I've got some garlic that I've chopped very finely. You could put it through a garlic press if you want. And I've got some green onions that I've sliced, and I've kept the whites separate from the greens. To know where that is, you just take your green onion, and where you see it start to separate, chop that, cut it right there. And then slice this half, put it in one bowl, slice this half, put it in another bowl, and we'll keep those separate. I'm going to start the sauce by putting my garlic and the white part of my green onions into the butter. And I'm going to let this cook just a few seconds until it's fragrant. Garlic burns very quickly, and so we don't want to let it go too long, so we don't want burned garlic. So just until you're starting to smell it. And then I'm going to add some beef broth, just a little bit. And I'm going to let this come to a simmer. And once it's simmering, I'm going to add my mushrooms back in. Careful not to dump your whole steak in there. But if some of the juices go in there, that's fine. It's going to flavor your sauce really nicely. I'm going to give this a stir, let it simmer a little bit longer so that it does thicken up a little bit. This isn't going to be as thick as like a white gravy, but it is going to be thicker than beef broth. All right, once it's simmering really good like this, I'm going to add in some sour cream. Now, this is not a light recipe, and if you think you can lighten it up by using Greek yogurt, don't ask me how I know, but that does not work. So go ahead and go for the full fat sour cream. You're only going to be using 2 tablespoons for 2 servings, so it's really not that much. Stir that so that it melts into your sauce. We'll add a little salt and pepper. All right, and that is ready to go on your steak. This should be enough sauce for 2 steaks. Be generous with it. Your friends will thank you. And then we'll garnish it with the green part of those green onions that we sliced earlier. There it is, our mushroom cream sauce on our New York strip steak.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we head to one of our favorite places, Greenleaf Nursery in Park Hill, Oklahoma, to learn more about how they got started. We then travel west to the Keystone Ancient Forest to talk with the Oklahoma Nature Conservancy. And finally, we leave the trees of eastern Oklahoma to head north to the tallgrass prairie to explore the ecology it offers. From bison to butterflies, you won't want to miss it. Great ingredients.
Very good. Go to your local Hideaway today.
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Day View Plants, the Tulsa Garden Center at Woodward Park, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, Smart Pot, and the Tulsa Garden Club.